Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne, and this is episode 127. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to hit the like, follow, or subscribe button on the platform that you're listening to us on. You can also check me out at the loudest.com on the planet, knac.com, for exclusive interviews, live show reviews, photos, album reviews, and more, not available on the Rock is George podcast. My guest for this episode is vocalist Mark Evans of the band Heaven's Edge. Heaven's Edge is going to be releasing their first studio album in 33 years on May 12th through Frontiers Music. It's called Get It Right. If you're a fan of 80s melodic rock or a fan of rock radio back in the day, you probably remember their self-titled album from 1990. They released the singles Skin to Skin, Find Another Way, and the song that seems to be all over every streaming platform, Come Play the Game. That was the song that helped me discover Heaven's Edge long after the band had packed it up. Of course, the band is back with their latest album, Get It Right, and we're going to find out how they all came back together, what they were doing in their downtime, and what their future holds for them. So here's vocalist Mark Evans of Heaven's Edge. If I knew absolutely nothing about Heaven's Edge, how would you describe the band's music to me?
I'd say we're a melodic hard rock band with a little bit of an edge. But, you know, it's tough. The time that we were out before everybody labeled everybody hair bands and, you know, which, you know, I never got the, you know, hair bands to me was kind of demeaning. Like, oh, all you're doing is trying to look good. And, you know, it's more about the look than the music. And with us, you know, the look was what it was because that's what people looked like at the time. But, you know, we always felt that musically the band, you know, I was fortunate to, you know, land in a band and start writing music with a guy as talented as Reggie Wu. And then when we put the rest of the band together, these guys can play. And we didn't want it to just be like, oh, well, we're just going to look pretty and write, you know, we wanted to make sure that there was a little bit of substance behind it. So I guess, you know, kind of hard to label because we've got very melodic ballad type stuff to very heavy, in fact, on the first record, even thrashy kind of stuff. So we got a little bit of everything.
I'll agree with that. And your latest album is Get It Right, coming out on May 12th through Frontiers Music. It's your first studio album in about 33 years or so. Yes. Get It Right. Is that kind of the mantra of the band, putting this album together after such a long break?
Absolutely. We couldn't, you know, as anything, when you're trying to come up with, you know, band name, album name, whatever, you know, we're going back and forth and back and forth. And it was back, I guess, in the fall, because, I mean, we've been fortunate. We've been able to listen to this record since last year, back in the fall when it was done and mixed. And I remember sitting out back with my wife, and I think a couple of my kids were over, and we were playing the rough mixes that had come over of the different songs. And it was the song When the Lights Go Down, which was just the third release that had just come out a little bit ago. And there's a line in the bridge of that song that says "Get It Right," and you know, we're out there listening to the song, and my wife just went, "Well, Get It Right." I mean, that could be a cool title, you know. And I was like, I kind of like that, and I texted it to the rest of the band, and we all were pretty much in agreement, like just that it's been a long time. Most bands don't get a second chance, like that. Not a chance. Let me reword that. This isn't a chance like it was 33 years ago where we could build a career out of this or try to anyway, or hope to. It's a different type of a chance that we're getting right now, which is just to put new music out after all these years with a great label, and get some exposure to that music. But we just, after all this time, and people now with social media can be very, very complimentary. And at the same time, they can be very, very critical. You know, I've once I knew that our album was done or getting close to done, I'd start paying more attention to other artists that were putting stuff out, and you'd start reading the reviews. And as much as musicians and songwriters and performers, as much as we're into music, the people that listen to it, some of them are just so into it. And you get this, it's like a small novel about the experience of listening to the record and what they liked and what they didn't like and why they liked it and why they didn't like it and stuff. So it became more and more important for us with this record to hopefully get it right, because we want people to, after all this time, listen to it and go, this is great. I love listening to this. I'm enjoying this, which is our main goal. We just want people to enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it, as much as we enjoyed being able to sit back and listen to it when it was done.
Well, I'll tell you, being a music fan for 46 years or so of my life and being on the critical end of things, you certainly got it right. And a lot of the critics think you got it right. So there's something to be proud of.
Well, thank you very much. We are just so beyond excited. It's almost like, it's almost like Christmas when like you got your wife or your husband or your kids or something, that really special gift. And then just as much as they're waiting for Christmas morning to get that gift or to get any of the gifts, the presents are going to be there. It's kind of that feeling like we have this thing that we just want everybody to hear and we want everybody to experience, because we want to know if they like it or not. We want them to enjoy it. And so for us, it's that anticipation too, like, oh, come on. Like, we're actually excited because next weekend, I'm not sure when this is airing, or if it's airing right now, it may be. But next weekend, we're playing at the M3 Festival down in Maryland. And the people that run M3 were generous enough to host our record release party, even though it's technically a week early. Because the record won't be out until the following Friday. They were very generous, where we're going to be able to go back to the big hotel where all the bands and everybody stays. And they're going to have a stage set up and a PA and all the gear and everything. And we're going to have a record release party. And Frontiers Records was nice enough to send us a whole lot of copies of the CD and even some copies of the vinyl of the record. So people that come to M3 are actually going to, if they want to purchase the CD or the vinyl, they're actually going to be able to get it a week early. So we'll actually get some reaction a little bit early.
Let's talk a little bit about the music you've released so far from the album. If you don't mind talking a little bit about the song Had Enough and kind of what inspired the lyrics for that one.
That song is, it's one of the 4 songs on the record that Reggie and I wrote with a guy named Jacob Bunton. Reggie and I were in the process of writing this record, and also pulling together, a couple of songs that were, that we had from, maybe a few years ago or something. And there were a few songs that were really close. We're like, we know there's something special here, but we're just not unlocking it. You know what I mean? It needs just that other ear. And our drummer introduced us to this Jacob Bunton, who is a phenomenal, incredibly talented musician and songwriter and producer. And Had Enough was one of those songs, and we had sent it out to him. And it had started out as just being this aggressive, maybe a little bit heavier. It is detuned just because we liked the sound of it, not because we were trying to be grungy or anything like that. It just sounded fat in that key with it detuned. But when it was written and when I came up with the chorus of Had Enough, it was really right in the midst of the COVID, the pandemic, the politics. Everybody hates everybody for hating everybody else and all the other crap that's going on in the world. And it was just kind of really written about that, just being fed up, just being just have had enough of it. Just really wanted to get back to normal, get back to life, get back to going out and playing shows again and getting in front of people and being around people and not being so isolated. And hopefully once that would happen, people might not be as angry as they've been. Fortunately, that's people are still angry, but we're just saying with it that we've had enough.
Absolutely. If I had to pick my favorite song on the album, I go with What Could Have Been. Fantastic song. If you want to get a little bit into the story behind that song.
Okay. That's actually the oldest song that's on the record. Reggie and I wrote that probably about 12 or 13 years ago. And we had maybe a couple years after that, we had we did put a band together with a couple of other local musicians, Jim Dernick and John Dennis playing the other guitar. And we were trying to write stuff that was away from the style of Heaven's Edge, trying to do something different. But What Could Have Been had already been written, and we all really liked the song. So we started doing the Ever After version, which was a little different than this one. But even with Ever After, the song, we just couldn't, same thing with this Jacob thing. We're like, the song's really good, but it just needs something. And so that was one of the songs we sent to Jacob. And he added a little bridge section to it and changed one of the lines in the chorus. And that was it. And he sent it back to us and we went, holy shit, that's what it was missing. And I think that might have been the first one that we worked on together with him. Because like I said, it was an older song. We just wanted to see if somebody else could, put that cherry on top of it, I guess. And it was great. And after he sent it back, we were like, oh my God, somebody else to work with. Maybe we just found 30 years too late. We found our Mutt Lang or, that sixth member in the studio kind of guy. But it was great. But he had, tweaked those couple things, but the song itself was written about all of the times over the years since back in the 90s when we split up and moved on and went on with our lives, that if we had been as successful as we had hoped we were going to be back then, and had been as successful as the people that really liked the band expected us to be, we would have been on tour all the time. Hopefully we would have made, a lot of money and all that wonderful stuff. But that didn't happen, obviously. And when everything ended for Heaven's Edge, we all kind of moved on with our lives. And, I was already married. I already had one child and another one on the way. And just decided to go, nope, this is, the music business has passed me by for now. It's now grunge. I don't get it. Can't write it. So I got to move on. So just went home and started raising the family, ended up with a third child and, great job, beautiful home, beautiful wife, 3 great kids. And when people would say, yeah, but, you guys should have this, you should have that. Well, yeah, that should have happened back then, but because it didn't, I'm still with my wife. I have 3 great kids. And if somebody were to come up to me and say, hey, you know what? I have the power. I can switch it. And all your dreams from back then are going to be true, but your life's going to change. For all the rich, the fame and glory and money and everything else that you could offer me from back then, I would never trade that for the family and the life that I have now. And so it was written to try and say that, what could have been is what my music career was from back then. That is what could have been. I would never want the life that I have and the family that I have to ever become what could have been, if that makes sense. Weird little twist on words. But when I had written it, Reggie was just like, oh my God, I love that. I feel exactly the same way. And all of us do. We're really lucky. Dave, our drummer, who is in the business, he's a record executive. He had put it really well a bunch of years ago. He's like, guys, he said, I've worked with, a lot of these bands, or members of the bands or people around these bands. He said, the bands that weren't Def Leppard and Motley Crue and Bon Jovi and that level of band, the bands below that are, they're our age. I mean, I'm 61 now, they're our age and they're out there traveling around the country in a van or whatever, and, just getting by, yes, they're out there making music and they're getting to play in front of the fans and play in front of people. And, and do all of that. But I don't want that. I'm too old for that. So now for us, a few times a year, we get to kind of, pierce the veil and see the other side of the curtain again for a weekend, or if it's the Monsters of Rock cruise for a week, and get to go and live that life. But then when we're done, we get on a plane, we fly home, and back to our regular lives. So we're really lucky. We've got the best of both worlds with it.
I was just going to say that you got the best of both worlds at this point. So it all kind of worked out, just in not in the way you planned it when you were younger.
Exactly.
Let's talk about When the Lights Go Down. That's, I believe, your latest single, if you want to talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, that song came about when George Guidotti, when our bass player, had passed away a few years ago. While he was, going through his, the being sick and everything, he was like, "Oh, if anything happens, I'm going to give you my bass, my stage bass, because I'm also a bass player." And he told Reggie he wanted to give him his, his favorite, acoustic guitar, his favorite guitar. And so that's what happened. And when I went up, when his wife had called me a few weeks after he had passed, and after the funeral and such, she called me up and she said, "George wants you to have this bass. If you want to come up, come over to the house and I'd like to give it to you." And in talking to her in that meeting, when she was giving me George's bass, she had said the line, she had said to me, she said, "When will the memories make me smile again?" And having lost George, and then a couple of years later, losing one of my best friends in the world, the same way I lost George, and watching it happen and going through it with them and going through it with their families and their loved ones and lives and such. The song was initially written by I went a little off track. Sorry. So Reggie came up with the music. He had gone up to see George's wife, George's widow, Dionne, and he got the acoustic guitar, and he came home that night. And a little later that night, he sent me just like a little audio file you can do on your iPhone. He goes, "Mark, I just got George's guitar, and it's GG's guitar. So I tuned it to an open G and just started playing. And I came up with this, this music, this acoustic thing." And I was like, "Oh, I love it." So I took that and wrote the initial version of When the Lights Go Down. And initially it was written more specifically about George, a lot more sentimental about George and about that. But it was a little almost too personal. And this was before we got signed, so it wasn't like, "Oh, this is going to be an album someday." But then after going through it again, with my friend Pete, and, going through it with him and his family and his wife and everything, the song had another rewrite after that. And then we sent it out to Jacob for Jacob to put his little special sauce on it as well. But I tried to write the song in the perspective of the people that are left behind. A lot of times people write songs about, who they lost. And I wanted to write it more about the experience of watching the people that were left behind after they lost a loved one, and what they were going through, during it and after. So I tried to write it more into that perspective. And the line made it, is in the song, "When will the memories make me smile again?" And anybody that's lost anybody, you go through the mourning periods and everything, but if you're lucky enough that you have those kind of memories with that person, hopefully at some point you feel okay that you can get together with your friends or talk about that person and reminisce and talk about the stories that did make you laugh, and have them make you laugh again. Because the memories are all we're going to have after that. And it's much better to focus on the good ones, especially the ones that are going to make you laugh.
Was there a point around Gigi's passing that you thought about putting Heaven's Edge to bed, or was it more of a situation that touched you that said, you know, life is short and we can't not try to make this new album and try to do this one more time?
I would say there was a brief time we definitely discussed whether or not we should continue going forward. And at the time that he passed, we had already been booked on the Monsters of Rock cruise the following winter. He had passed away in August. And so we knew that that was hanging out there, that we needed to give them an answer if we were going to do this or not. And the more the four of us talked about it, we just thought that, you know, the legacy of the band and the legacy of George would just disappear and just vanish if we stopped. And, you know, we know this isn't going to last forever. We're all getting older and everything, but we were like, you know what? If we have the opportunity to go out there and represent the band in a proud way and represent George in a proud way and continue on with this music and continue on with the band, then we're, in a way, we're kind of keeping him with us, you know, and his spirit alive in all of this, because George lived for this. I mean, George was born to be a rock star. He wasn't born to, you know, that was what he was put on this earth to be. Nothing, that was him. And I make him sound shallow. He was a good dad and all that stuff. But when it came to what he was put here to do, he was a rock star. And even throughout the time of making this record, we would just be like, oh my God, George would freaking love this. George would be losing his mind. And I fortunately knew Jaron Galino, who's now our bass player. He's much younger than us, but one of the hardest working people you'll ever see. One of the nicest people you ever want to meet. Incredibly talented bass player, and you know, and he was on the road with the band Tantric at the time. Since then, he had joined a band called The Life Project with Cassandra Carson, who's the singer in Paralandra, and what's his name? I think it's Josh, the guitar player from Stone Sour. So he had The Life Project going on. Then, I guess, I don't know, 5-6 months ago, he joined Lynch Mob as well. And, but I talked to the guys about Jaron, you know, because we just wanted we needed something that was going to match the energy what George had on stage. And we were like, okay, somebody our age isn't going to match the energy that George had. You know, he was like the ever ready bunny. He just never stopped once he got on stage. And so we're like, okay, we'll go for somebody younger. And I was like, wait, I know a guy. And I sent them a short, like 30-second clip from Facebook that I saw of Jaron on stage with Tantric. And they were like, he's perfect. Does he want to do it? I said, I don't know. I'll have to ask him. And so I got in touch with Jaron and asked him. And he was like, you're kidding me, right? And I said, no, I'm dead serious. He's like, I'm in. And I said, well, what about the dates? I mean, if we have a show or whatever, he's like, I'll find a way to make it work. And he would do that. Like we would have a gig and he'd fly in from, you know, Montana or Michigan or God knows where, and do the gig and leave. But we brought him in, and it did give the band some energy. He's got a great playing style, and it definitely gave us some energy. And then when we went out and did the Monsters of Rock cruise, which were the first shows that we'd ever done without George, and with Jaron up on stage, Jaron he's a natural up there, and a lot of people already knew who he was because of, you know, being in Tantric and such, and people just accepted him, and we were thrilled. And so we were like, okay, this is going to work. We can continue. And like I said, at that point there, we didn't even know that we were going to be recording a new record. So a lot happened since then. But yeah, it was only a brief time that we thought about, you know, just packing it in because of that, because I think George would have come down and smacked us all in the head. So are you kidding me? You got a chance to do this? You're going to say no?
How'd you end up signing the deal with Frontiers for this album?
It was strange. When we got signed back in the day, we were the ones out pursuing the record deal. This time, and I kid you not, we were not pursuing. We were not even thinking about a record deal or anything like that. And which is funny because we've got our drummer is a record executive. Now he owns his own label. But he wasn't going to sign us because he was a Roadrunner at the time, and they were much heavier than we are. But it wasn't even in our mind. And Frontiers reached out to us. They, reached out to us about doing it. And we had a video chat with them, and they explained to us what the deal was. They explained to us actually a 3-record deal. So if we can somehow pull this off, there's going to be 2 more if we can survive it. But they talked to us about it, and we're like, you know what? I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're going to sign a record deal at our age. But if you're at our age and you're a band like us, to be able to go, yeah, I'm on the same label now as Journey and Toto and Whitesnake and Night Ranger and, everybody else under the sun, just about Winger. It's kind of hard to believe, but it was hard to say no to. And, they're a strong label. They've been great with us. They really kind of let us do our thing. They wanted us to put out the Heaven's Edge record that we wanted to put out. They weren't going to go, oh, you have to this or you have to that. They let us do our thing. So that was nice as well.
And you guys are going to be hitting the road to promote the album. It looks like Festival Roots. I don't know if you got anything beyond M3, the New England Rock Fest, or what do you got beyond that?
We are doing a show in, I think it's Frenchtown, Pennsylvania, in late August with a couple of local bands. One, you might know them as either Rough House or Tease, but they were a band that was also on Columbia Records and kind of went through the same shit we did. But they're a local band as well. So it's going to be us with Rough House and another local band called Sick Vicky, I believe, is going to be with us as well. But that'll be in August. September, I know we are going to Hamburg, Germany. We're doing a festival over in Hamburg. And then we have the New England Fest in October. We're working on a bunch, some other dates over the summer. I know we do have some stuff coming up next year that I can't talk about right now because they'll be upset because I announced it. But we're working on it. It's kind of a new thing for us, to have a new record coming out and everything that goes with it. So we're kind of just going along for the ride and see what happens because it's all been a surprise so far.
So you guys released your debut album in 1990. You released a couple of singles from the album. Shortly after that, you switched labels. Nothing really manifested from there, and you guys kind of went dormant for a little while. Well, a long while.
Yeah.
What brought you guys back together?
In 2012, I had been contacted by a guy, promoter in Ireland named Kieran Dargan. And he had been running for I think, 8 or 9 years before then in Nottingham, England. Every year he was doing a weekend festival called Firefest. And he had messaged me on Facebook, this is my name, this is what I do. We're doing this festival over here, and I would love to have your band come over and do it. So I got back to him and I said, well, one problem, we're not a band. We haven't done a full show in 20 some years. And so he was very persistent, and I wasn't blowing him off, but it was kind of like, I haven't seen a few of these guys in a few years. Reggie and I always stayed in touch. Dave and I stayed in touch, some, but it wasn't, and George and I, but it wasn't, an all the time thing. And so finally Kieran said, look, can I call you? I said, okay. So he calls me up and explains to me what the deal is. And he's like, look, Mark, you're going to come over for the weekend. I promise you we're going to treat you like gold. You are going to feel like rock stars all weekend. And then You're going to fly back home, and on Monday morning, you're going to have to take the trash out just like you always do. And I was like, oh, okay, great. And so I told her on the phone, I said, Kieran, all I can tell you is that I promise you I will reach out to the guys. And if they're interested, we will get together and we will rehearse. And if we don't suck beyond repair, then I'll let you know that we're going to come to England. And we got together, and the chemistry of the band was just easy again. I mean, we got together and we were like, wow, didn't expect that. And so we agreed, and we ended up going over and playing to this like sold out festival over in England, and could not have been more shocked at the reaction, because we had never gone to Europe and played. So we had no idea that there was even a fan base over there, even though Kieran was very adamant, Mark, you're going to be shocked. You're not going to believe it. People love you guys over here. And I can still remember actually like hyperventilating, because a lot of the festivals, it's just the band, the next band, the next, it just, you're just going. And so there isn't that, okay, let's get up on the stage and set things up and get used to how everything is. And none of that. It's like, okay, you guys are on at 15. All right. And then the curtain's up and you walk out on stage, the guys plug their guitars in, and a couple minutes later, the curtain drops and it's go time. And when that curtain dropped and I just saw all those people, I was like, breathe. Because like I said, it had been so many years, and you go from, okay, instead of just like a little warm up gig, here, let's play this big festival in another country, and and not have the chance, like I said, the sound check, get to know the stage, anything like that. But that happened, and we did the meet and greet and everything over there, and we were sold. We were like, wow, we can still do this. And, so little by little each year, more and more came up. And then, a couple of years ago, Frontiers called. So now we've got even more to talk about. So now with the new record, some new shows coming up, getting to play new music after all these years, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Those are all the questions I have for you today. The new album by Heaven's Edge is Get It Right. It comes out May 12th on Frontiers Music. And like I said earlier, you guys, you got it right.
Thank you so much, George. I really appreciate that.
Once again, I want to thank Mark Evans of Heaven's Edge for coming on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out their latest album, Get It Right, out May 12th on Frontiers Music. Head over to your favorite music streaming platform. Take a listen to what's available. If you like what you hear, buy a physical copy. Support the artist. For all things Heaven's Edge, head over to their official Facebook page, /Heaven's Edge Band. I also want to thank John Freeman of Freeman Promotions and Frontiers Music for making this interview possible. You've been great. I've been George Dionne. I'll see you again soon.